Radio.
Okay, well, I didn't get the prompt that I usually get when I am about to go on air, so I'm assuming everything is live now, but let me just set this up real quick here. Sorry about that, everyone. I had some screw-ups at the last moment. All right, so this is Fundamentally Mormon. I am Mark Wickton Walter, coming to you live on this 25th day of February 2019. The guest call-in number is 917-889-8827. That's 917-889-8827. I fixed my shirt here. Garments are showing. Anyway, we are continuing on with 95 Thesis, topic 80. Page 115 of 95 Thesis, and we're going to be talking about lawyers today, and the guest call-in number, I think I already said it, 917-889-8827, and we do have the studio up and running. We are also broadcasting live on Facebook at facebook.com/LAZURUS1977 and at youtube.com/user/God-is-my-compass. The channel name is Messiah Ben Joseph. So, all right, let's just get right into the reading. Actually, I kind of feel like I should be praying at the beginning of these shows. I used to do that all the time when I did The Kingdom of God or Nothing. So I'm just going to dedicate this show real quick to our Father in Heaven, and I'll offer a prayer, and then we'll get into this. O God, the Eternal Father, we come to Thee in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. We ask Thee, Father, to forgive our sins and our transgressions, that we might have Thy Spirit to be with us, and that we might learn truth, and that we might turn away from the error of our ways and our false traditions. We look forward to being tools in Thine hand, to bring about the redemption of Zion, that Thy kingdom would come on earth as it is in heaven, that the Ancient of Days would come down out of heaven as spoken of in Daniel chapter 7, that we might have a place to dwell among Thee and among Thy children in righteousness. We love Thee, Father, and we ask for Thy blessings to be upon us, and I dedicate this show unto Thee, and do so in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, even Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. So we'll just get right into this. Hello. All right. So one of the things, too, you can communicate with me via Messenger. If you are not Messenger, please don't do Messenger. On the Facebook Live, you can watch the show, and you can also comment and put questions on there or whatnot. If you don't want to call in, but I will take calls if I get them. Like I said, the call-in number is 917-889-8827. That's area code 011, or not, country code 011. So, anyway, excuse me. But we do have a live worldwide audience, and some people can't afford to call in, so that's why I do the Facebook and the YouTube as well. But I don't really watch the YouTube chat at all. That I have the camera for YouTube sitting on top of the iPad, but that's over there. And anyway, let's see. Let's see here. Okay, cool. All right, let's just get right into it. So basically what we're doing here on the radio show is we have 2 hours of live streaming with an hour of overdrive if we need it. And what I've been doing lately is reading a book called 95 Thesis, which you can read for free at ogdenkraut.com. And you can also find these videos at Zion's Redemption Bookstore page on Facebook. And it goes over the scriptures and quotes from the early leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as restored to the earth by the prophet Joseph Smith, and led by others like Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball and John Taylor and Wilford Woodruff and all of these guys, right? And the shift away from those things into the modern era, which came about around the time of 1921 when Heber J. Grant basically took over and started changing things. But things started changing even during the time of Brigham Young, and by 1880 they had changed who Jesus Christ was, calling him Jehovah, when earlier teachings were that Jesus Christ and Jehovah were two separate individuals. So, but right now, like I said, we're reading a book called 95 Thesis, and we are on topic 80, lawyers. So I'll just get into the reading. And all ye lawyers who have no business, only as you hatchet up, would to God you would go to work or run away. Joseph Smith, Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 329. I think that a community is civilized so far as is free from contentions, lawsuits, and litigations of every kind. When I hear men and women say that they will go to a Gentile court to have their difficulties adjusted, I think they will go to hell unless they refrain from such a spirit. Now I ask every man and woman who wishes an honorable name in the church and kingdom of God upon the earth, if they have entertained any idea of going to law, to banish it from their minds at once. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 11, page 257 through 259. When God spoke from heaven to Joseph Smith, the people were bound down by priestcraft, doctorcraft, kingcraft, and lawyercraft, the four grand crafts that uphold the Satan's kingdom. Brigham Young, Deseret News, July 12, 1865. You want to read a really good book about that. It's called The Four Crafts by Ogden Kraut, which you can find at ogdenkraut.com. Click on Read Ogden's Books and then scroll down to The Four Crafts. Good book. I covered it on one of my old shows at the blogtalkradio.com /The Kingdom of God or Nothing, which you can also find on iTunes. The title of the show was The Kingdom of God or Nothing, which is a quote of John Taylor. So, but it's a really good book. I really suggest people take a look at that. But continuing on with 95 Thesis, it requires a lawyer, a man who is well schooled in all that men know, to make things appear what they really are not. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 11, page 215. And I will give unto you fair warning, and I call upon Brother Peary here, who is president of this stake, to carry it out, that when he finds any Latter-day Saints under his jurisdiction going to law with his brother before the ungodly, to bring him up and deal with him for his fellowship, that is a correct principle before God, and as saints of God, we should be governed by his laws and not by the laws of the world. John Taylor, Journal of Discourses, Volume 20, page 105 and 106. Now, from the early history of this church, almost every man, every elder or member that has undertaken to study or practice law was in a very short time on the high road to apostasy and destruction. And every member of this church who has undertaken to practice law as a profession has gone neck and heels to the devil. George Albert Smith, Journal of Discourses, Volume 6, page 160. But in today's modern church, we are taught a great many of the leading men of the church are lawyers, and BYU, Brigham Young University, has built a special building for educating the youth of Zion in lawyercraft, while they are restricting the field of religion. Page 116, topic 81, doctors. And Asa in the 39th year of his reign was diseased in his feet until his disease was exceedingly great. Yet in his disease he sought not to the Lord, but to the physicians. And Asa slept with his fathers and died in the 41st year of his reign. That's it. 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 12 and 13. I preached to a large congregation at the stand on the science and practice of medicine, desiring to persuade the saints to trust in God when sick, and not in the arm of flesh, and live by faith, not by medicine or poison. Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 190. What I would say, just my own commentary, is that anybody who goes to the doctor when they receive a medication, that they should tell God that they're going to receive this medication, and they would like a confirmation of the Spirit if that is what is right. If it is wrong, the Spirit will withdraw from you, and you'll be left to the buffetings of Satan, which is that the Spirit, when the Spirit withdraws from you, you're left to depression and anxiety and fear and hatred and just really uneasiness. And if that comes upon you, I wouldn't touch that medication with a 10-foot pole, because the devil's got his claws in pharmakia today in these witchcrafts. And so in the old days, they used to make potions, witches made potions, right? And now in today's modern society, they've learned how to synthesize that down into powder form and make them into pills. And some of them are really bad side effects, which includes death in some cases. I would just suggest that the saints seek God in all things, and especially when getting medication, that they seek Him to make sure what they are receiving into their bodies is right according to His to what He wants for us. So if you don't receive anything, I guess I would just take them. It's kind of like God sometimes, like, for advice on things, and I tell Him what I'm going to do, and if the Spirit doesn't withdraw from me, I just go forward with it. But if the Spirit withdraws from me, I know that what that path is that I was choosing to go down is the wrong path, and I will go away from it and repent and basically tell God, okay, I'm not going to do this because the Spirit's withdrawn from me, and I need to have the Spirit with me. So that's just my opinion and my commentary on that. But continuing on, I would rather have a wife of mine that knows what medicine to give me when I am sick than a professional doctor in all the world. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 12, page 225. And that's probably because Brigham Young was worried about getting killed by these guys. They had tried to poison the sacrament wine, and the Gentiles like to try to do things. And in fact, it's unfortunate, but they did an autopsy on Brigham Young's corpse. And it's been a number of years, but they found out that he died from cyanide poisoning. So they went and they looked around trying to figure out how it was delivered to him. And his secretary used to give him coffee every day. And back before the days of Heber J. Grant, coffee wasn't against any commandment of God, and it still isn't, because it's not given by way of commandment but as a word of wisdom. But that was changed all by Heber J. Grant in the 1920s. But Joseph Smith's, as well as John Taylor's coffee mugs, coffee cups, which the church still has, tested positive for cyanide. So that's how that poison was delivered to them. But poison can be delivered to us in a variety of methods, and it is the goal of the New World Order and the Illuminati to keep us sick and dumb down and poor so that we cannot revolt against them when they try to take our rights away from us. So I just keep that in mind whenever you go after medicine, and keep in mind that God does speak to his children. He gives us revelation, and we need to seek after him before we go trusting after doctors and pharmacia. Because pharmacia, they don't care, and they will lie about everything. They don't care about you. All they care about is keeping you as a customer. They don't care about curing diseases. They only care about masking symptoms, and that's no healing at all. So anyway, but continuing, who is the real doctor? The man that knows by the spirit of revelation what ails an individual, and by the same spirit knows what medicine to administer. That is the real doctor. The others are quacks. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 15, page 226. And another thing, too, God does inspire people to, as far as cures and healing and stuff. But like I said, the devil's got his claws into things, and he doesn't want any of us to be healthy. Hold on here. Stupid fly. No flies until I do my radio show. Go figure. Anyway, doctors and their medicines I regard as deadly bane to any community. Give your children, when sick, a little simple herb drink, and if they have eaten too much, let them go without food until their stomachs are cleansed and purified, and have faith in the name of Jesus and in the ordinances of his church, and they will live. That is my faith with regard to this thing. I am not very partial to doctors and lawyers. I can see no use for them unless it is to raise grain or go to mechanical work. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 15, page 109. Seriously? This stupid fly. Anyway, but in the modern church today, the church is filled with doctors and has been in the hospital business. In fact, they own a large majority of LDS hospital and primary children's and a bunch of different things. So I would say that it does apply to mental illness as well. So they want the government and the systems of this world want to get everybody diagnosed in a mental illness so that they can take your rights away from you. And so, like, my wife was diagnosed with bipolar when she was a teenager. She is not bipolar, and that's something you don't just get healed from, right? So I really don't trust SSRIs as well, and I'm answering a question on the Facebook, but I don't trust SSRIs as well because all of these school shooters are on SSIs. This medication for their depression and all of the problems that they have. And when I was married to my first wife, I got on the medication because of what was going on, and I was just having a really hard time dealing with what was going on in my first marriage. I was only married for 4 months, and I had started taking the SSRIs for mental illness, for deep depression, and unfortunately, so I was getting my medication through a nurse practitioner at La Salle Community College, where I was going to college at, and this particular person went on vacation. When I ran out of medication, they were gone for like 2 weeks or something like that, and I wasn't able to get any medication. And I had a nervous breakdown because when you come off the medication, it screws you up with your chemicals in your body, your neurons, and all of that, and it screwed me up hard. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the fact that I had been on those drugs. So I don't really trust them, and I think that any medication that somebody wants to put us on, and we should get revelation before we take that. The other thing, too, is there is an epidemic in Utah for depression, for anxiety, and these type of things. If you believe in false doctrine, and if the Spirit has withdrawn from you, of course you're going to be left to the buffetings of Satan. Healing it starts with repentance, but Satan uses these drugs to give us an ease and a calmness, and also it diminishes our thought processes. But he does this to replace the Spirit so that we can all go in the all is well in Zion crowd and be okay with what's going on and with the changes and stuff. But if you believe in false doctrine, first of all, you receive strong delusion that you might be damned because you did not love God enough to go and ask him what the truth was. But second of all, these drugs that are out there try to mimic that peace and that calmness that you have when you have the Spirit. And like, it's a big deal in Utah. A lot of people are having problems with it, and I believe it's because they, as the saints of God, should know better. They should be studying the truth. It's out there for everybody to study, and not just relying upon the arm of flesh, which is the corporate church, to do their thinking for them. And because they let the church and the authorities within the church do the thinking for them, God withdraws from them, and then they have problems with depression and stuff like that. So, this person, Allie, is just saying that she hasn't had any good luck with SSRIs. One thing that I did, so I struggled with depression from the time I was like 9 years old, was when I told my mom that I wanted to die, mostly because of all of the abuse and the drug problems that were in the home earlier on, and the alcoholism that my stepdad dealt with, and dealt with depression all throughout the years, on and off. And finally, in 2010, I got engaged to this girl, and we were supposed to be married February 22nd of 2011. And I mean, we were soulmates, deeply in love, and there was like a spiritual attraction. It was really amazing. But her, the Spirit told me not to, God told me not to go into the house, and that there would be problems with the mother, and I justified it. I didn't listen to the Spirit. I said, well, I'm just going to go put this stuff of hers out of my motorhome into her room, and then I'll leave. And anyway, the mother tried to pick a fight with me, and it just turned into bad. It was bad. Anyway, but the father was also abusive towards my fiance. She was only 23 at the time, I think, and I was 33. So I'm quite a bit older than her. And anyway, they forbid her from marrying me, and I got suicidal, like bad. And the only way I could break out of that was by changing my location. I put all of my belongings in my motorhome that I was living in, put it in storage. I packed I had a Hyundai Elantra hatchback, 4-door hatchback, which I love that car. But I packed that up. I put a cargo container on the top to hold my clothes and stuff, and I made my way from Everett, Washington. I was headed towards Miami. I didn't get to Miami. I got to Tampa, Florida, but I got out of the situation. I changed my circumstances, and I know I could do that as a single man, and it's a little bit harder to do that if you are not single. But changing your circumstances and shaking things up and relying upon God like I did, it broke me out of that depression. It didn't take drugs for me. And I was homeless when I got to Tampa. I didn't have a job. Luckily, I was on unemployment at the time because I'd gotten laid off of my summertime job, and which was driving dump truck for Kilgore Trucking. But I had a little bit of money to get down there. But by the time I got down there, the unemployment got cut off, and I was there and on my own. Slept in my car for 3 weeks. Every morning, as soon as I got there, I found out where the workforce labor, temporary labor, pay-by-day labor places were. And I was there at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, and I'd stay there all day until I got a job or till, they said there's nothing else coming in. So, but sometimes I'd stay there even after that, and then something else would come in, and I would get called out. So, anyway, and then I slept in my car, and I showered at the beach, at the showers on the beach, and eventually saved up and got a 3-bedroom apartment about a mile from the beach. But it was just a complete shake-up with my life. I had to get away from everything, to get away from all of the things in my life that were hard at that time. So Timothy here says, Jesus is a bit late. Is he not? Or perhaps he returned as a thief in the night and no one else noticed him yet. Please explain. According to Doctrine and Covenants, according to revelation that Jesus Christ has given us, he will not appear as man walking on the earth, which actually contradicts something that Joseph Smith said, but that he would appear in the east and that all would see him when he returned. So no, he hasn't returned yet. The thing that seems to contradict what Joseph Smith said, which is that the Messiah would come and he would come as naturally as a man that walks among us. And when people would see him, they would say, is that the Messiah? Joseph Smith was alluding to Messiah ben Yosef, Messiah ben Ephraim, same person, who would come to prepare the way for Zion's redemption. He's spoken of in Doctrine and Covenants, section 105, and I do proclaim to be that man, Messiah ben Yosef, as a witness of the Father and the Son, an eyewitness. Now, when Jesus returns, everyone will see him. So if any man says to you that Jesus is in a certain church or in the desert or anywhere, now he will appear. I know people who he's appeared to. I have friends that have seen him face to face, as I have, but he has not returned yet. In fact, there's so many things that have to happen still before the return of Jesus Christ. You're going to see the city of Enoch return to the earth with the church of the firstborn to prepare a kingdom, and for Adam and Undiaman with the prophet and the prophets and the patriarchs, including the Ancient of Days, who is Father Adam, who is Michael, as we find out in Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel chapter 12. All these things will happen before Yeshua, Jesus Christ, returns. The temple will be built in Jerusalem, I believe. In fact, the Ark of the Covenant has already been found, except for no one can touch it because they die as soon as they touch it, which I think is going to be kind of cool when it'll be like a sword in the stone scenario where King Arthur pulled the stone out of the sword, except for it'll be bringing the Ark of the Covenant out of Solomon's grotto or caves underneath the temple. And the person that can do that will basically be proved that he is the servant that he says he is. He is one of the two witnesses. But we've got so many things that need to happen before the return of Jesus Christ. And yes, we are in the end days, but there's so many things that have to, everybody wants it to happen now, but it's not. It's going to happen when everything is right. The Father knows the timing. The Son doesn't even say that he knows the timing, but we can know the day or the season thereof, the times and seasons, and we know that we're in the last days. So it will be probably it'll be within my lifetime for sure. Hopefully many people who are watching will be there when it happens. And Jesus will not return until the two witnesses are taken up off the earth with all they who believe them. That's what the Christians call the rapture. So when the two witnesses are taken up, that's when the rapture happens. and they go to meet Jesus in the air as the earth is being cleansed, and he returns, and the wicked are burned in his glory. So anyway, but that's all in the future, and we're close, but we're not that close. So anyway, continuing on. The church today is filled with doctors and has been in the hospital business. Many members of the church, many leaders of the church will go to a Gentile doctor before they call the elders of the church. So, and that's part of the apostasy of the Latter-day Saints, which is spoken of in Isaiah chapter 28, where it talks about the drunkards of Ephraim, speaking of the church in the last days. Topic 82, midwives, on page 117 of 95 Thesis. Let's see. It will be so... Hold on. Excuse me. It will be so in a little time that not a woman in all Israel... And remember, Israel, the name Israel wasn't given to the Jews. In the books of Chronicles, it says that the name of Israel, or the birthright of Israel, was given to Ephraim. So Ephraim is Israel. The place over in the Holy Land, that should be Judah, the kingdom of Judah. The Jews, not Israel. They aren't Israel. Israel is Ephraim. So anyway, so when Brigham Young or whoever talks about Israel, it's talking about the tribe of Ephraim. So it will be so in a little time that not a woman in all Israel will dare to have a baby unless she can have a doctor by her. Journal of Discourses, Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 15, page 225. Oh, you're welcome, Timothy. He was just saying that he appreciates my knowledge of Scripture. All right, 4 ladies are set apart as midwives. This is a church calling. That was a church calling back in the old days. Journal of Abraham Cannon, page 6. Great exertions are made by the sisters to prepare themselves to nurse each other, the entire accomplishment of which is most desirable. And every good man will lend influence and aid to accomplish this object, regardless of personal aggrandizement and pockets full of gold. Jesus taught the principle that if a person seeks after a sign by which to know the truth of the gospel, know ye that a person has an adulterous spirit. And the same principle is equally true in regards to women who desire a doctor instead of a female nurse, to wait on them when they are sick, and the doctor who delights in nursing women instead of instructing them on how to nurse themselves and each other is possessed of the same spirit. We give this for a sign unto Israel, and Israel will profit by it. We don't expect anybody else will. Samuel Richards, editorial, Millennial Star, volume 14, page 473, given September 18th, 1852. As a profession, midwifery is as old as the world. Always and ever until the last century have women presided as high priestesses in the chamber of birth. Their skills, their resourcefulness, their tact, their tender touch, all these things, together with their natural cleanliness of mind and body, fit them to assist the mother and to cleanse and prepare the child for entrance into the world. The wonderfully strict regulations which are recorded by Moses in Leviticus convince us that he provided inspired hygienic laws for the midwives among the people. Gradually, the study and practice of surgical obstetrics was taken over by men, and yet not until the most recent time have men attempted to usurp all ordinary phases of midwifery and turn women entirely out from their ancient profession. Relief Society magazine, August 1915, volume 2, number 8. Patty Bartlett, Sessions was called Mother Sessions. She could be called the mother of Mormon midwifery. It is recorded that Patty delivered 3,977 babies. She was set apart for this by the prophet Joseph Smith. See Our Pioneer Heritage, Volume 6, page 426. And they don't even do that anymore at all. They trust more in Babylon than they trust in the way God has asked us to do things. Page 119. However, you can have midwives help you in the delivery of your babies. There are still midwives out there for a price. My wife delivered the last two by midwives, and the one that we are going to have here in July, little boy that we're going to have, we are consulting with midwives. My wife's been to several appointments with them, so you can still do, but it's not a church calling as it was back in the days of old. We tend to run towards Babylon more than we tend to run towards the saints of God. So, all right, and we're friends with. Well, I won't get into it. July 15th, 1873, President Brigham Young issued a request through the bishops of the wards that the presidents of relief societies throughout the church appoint 3 women from each ward to study hygiene, nursing, and midwifery. Our Pioneer Heritage, Volume 6, page 363. Many of the women who practiced midwifery in Utah were trained in their native lands, some in medical schools or hospitals, others working under eminent physicians. But the majority of medically minded women were called and set apart by the presiding authorities of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thus, armed with this authority and the blessings of the Lord, they went forth and performed a marvelous work in the settlements. Our Pioneer Heritage, Volume 6, page 425. But today in the modern church, according to the State Registration Office, the last license issued for a midwife in Utah was July 15th, 1932. But there are still midwives in Utah. I don't know if there was like a break in the chain or what was going on, but I know that there's midwives because I've been there when my babies have been delivered by them. So anyway, just throwing that out there. I know we go up to Provo in Utah County to meet with the midwives that will be delivering my son in July. So page 119, topic 83, birth control. For in those days the sons of men began to transgress against God. This is speaking of the antediluvian world, the world before the flood. They would give their women a drink that would cause them to be infertile so that they would not lose their form and their shape. And this was considered a great sin to God and his people. So anyway, but that's what this is talking about. For in those days the sons of men began to transgress against God and to transgress the commandments which he had commanded to Adam to be fruitful and multiply in the earth. And some of the sons of men caused their wives to drink a draught that would render them barren, in order that they might retain their figures, and whereby their beautiful appearances might not fade. The book of Jasher, which Joseph Smith did use, even though it's not in our Bible or the Book of Mormon, it was in the original King James Version, I think. But a bunch of stuff was taken out of the 1611 King James. In the 1800s, by the way. It's interesting. Anyway, the book of Jasher, chapter 11, page 19 and 20. For behold, this is my work and my glory, to bring to pass the immortality and the eternal life of man. Full of great price, Moses chapter 1, verse 39. God revealed to me that there was a second part to that, and this is what it is. God's work and glory is to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man and to fill the universe with his creation. So, just thought I'd add that. All right, continuing. I have told you many times that there are multitudes of pure and holy spirits waiting to take tabernacles or bodies. Now, what is our duty? To prepare tabernacles or bodies for them, to take a course that will not tend to drive those spirits into the families of the wicked, where they will be trained in wickedness, debauchery, and every species of crime. It is the duty of every righteous man and woman to prepare bodies or tabernacles for the spirits, for the spirits, women, that they can. Hence, if my women leave, I will go and search up others who will abide the celestial law and let all I now have go where they please, though I send the gospel to them. Brigham Young, Journal of Discourses, Volume 4, page 56. Sorry, I'm having a problem reading. So we know by revelation and by Scripture that we were not just created in the womb, that our spirits existed before the foundation of this world. I find it interesting, and I attend a Pentecostal church because I'm not welcome in the churches where I'm at in this county, even though I've never caused any problems among them other than doing these radio shows, which they hate. But I attend a Pentecostal church in Carbon County, and they do not understand these things at all. And I'm not going to cause too much of a stir and division, and I give them as much as they can handle. And I'm thankful to do that, just as much as they can handle. And God does that to all of us. He lets us have as much as we can handle, and because of our false traditions, we damn ourselves, but He's going to try to bless us the most that He can with the knowledge that He wants to give us, right? So, we were talking about the baby, the man born blind. And the Jews were like, did this man sin? Or did this child, or this baby, or this man sin before he was born? Well, how can a man sin before he was born? It's because they knew that the spirit of the man and the women existed before it came into the flesh. And God wants us as righteous men and women to create bodies for these these spirits and raise them up in righteous principles. So when a Latter-day Saint only has one or two children because of their selfishness, because they would rather have, one or two's enough, they're expensive and whatnot, God wants people to raise up children unto Him. He never has withdrawn that. He never will. He wants us to be righteous examples to our children and to raise them in righteousness. And if there are children out there that have, there's foreordination. There's pre-assignment of husbands and wives. And there are the children are also assigned to the mother, and then if the father is whatever, but they're assigned to the mother. So women that have, like, sharing a personal experience. My grandmother had 3 daughters. She wanted to have more children. My grandfather went behind her back and had a vasectomy because he didn't want any more. I love my grandpa, but that was a selfish thing to do. My grandmother knew that she should have 2 more children. But because we could not come to her because of what my grandfather did, we were reassigned to my mother, the youngest daughter, and my aunt, the middle daughter, received the other one. And we were still raised by my grandmother and grandfather because there was covenants made. And so, like, these things happen where sometimes the spirit has to go a different way to come to the mother, but we are all assigned a certain number of children, and things that we covenant to in the pre-existence. And it's like with my wife. When we put my little girl in the car when she was a newborn, my wife was kind of freaking out a little bit because she's like, oh, we're missing one. And there was like 4 kids. We have 4 kids. But she was missing one. Or she was missing more than one, but she was missing one. That was that little child in the spirit saying, don't forget about me. And now we're going to have him, hopefully. And I believe that there are more that are supposed to come. When a woman knows that she's done, she'll know it. And for us to withhold ourselves from creating these bodies for our spirit children to where they have to go to a Gentile family is sad. And I think that there will be some accounting that has to be done in the judgment bar. Why didn't you have the children when you knew that you were supposed to have more? So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there, but continuing on. The loudest outcry against us and the most devoted efforts against us come from the region. You know what? I gotta say something. I'm gonna stop with this. So I was reading earlier today, and I did a video, and you can find it on my Facebook and my YouTube. I did 2 parts, reading Rob Kay's thing about plural marriage. And there is things about plural marriage that can be very wicked. Taking many wives unto yourself without receiving revelation is wicked. Okay? In Jacob, in the Book of Mormon, it says that you should have one wife unless I, the Lord, reveal it to you, so that I can raise up seed unto myself, right? I know so many women in the church that do not have husbands, who are the elect daughters of God, who wait until they're in their 30s and 40s to get married, not because they can't, or because they don't want to, it's because they can't find righteous men who are worthy of them. If, and this is what my wife has said, if the church allowed polygamy, my wife could suggest to a righteous woman that she's led to by the Spirit, hey, my husband is a good man, and he will treat you right. You could consider him to be a husband. A lot of these women that have made covenants with others in the pre-existence, because of the wickedness of the church and because of the wickedness of the Gentiles within the church, many of those that may have been called, they're not chosen. So women, sometimes because of the covenants are getting broken, they can go be placed with another family. But there's just so many people, are women in the church, and they're not having children. God wants to raise up a righteous generation to the world, or to his kingdom, in all ages, right now especially. But these women cannot have babies unless they do it out of wedlock, or they marry these schmucks who are Gentiles who will teach their children in wickedness. And it's a sad state of affairs in the church as far as I'm concerned, among the people of God, that they cannot live as God has asked us to live. So anyway, I'll get back into the reading. The loudest outcry against us and the most devoted efforts against us come from the region where these dreadful practices prevail, where women murder their offspring before they are born and are guilty of this prenatal murder among the people of the United States who think themselves the most enlightened. I say to you, my sisters, you teach your daughters against this accursed practice, or they will go to hell. They will be damned. They will be murderers, and the blood of innocents will be found on them. A man that would sanction such a thing in his family, or that would live with a woman guilty of such acts, shares in the crime of murder. I would no more perform the ordinance of laying on of hands on a woman who is guilty of that crime of abortion, if I knew it, than I would put my hands on the head of a rattlesnake. We must set our faces like flint against such acts. The Apostle George Q. Cannon, Journal of Discourses, Volume 26, pages 14 and 15. Could you imagine if the leadership of the church today would quote this in General Conference? The wicked terrors that are among us would come and they would howl and cry out against the leadership of today's church, if they were to teach the old teachings in the church today concerning this topic. It is murder to commit abortion. There is no justification in it whatsoever. There never has been and there never will be. In the modern church today, many men and women in the church use birth control and devices. Seldom is a sermon heard against their practices or use. And in fact, the church policy is that abortion should be performed in certain circumstances. And the church supports that. All right, page 120, topic 84, herbology. And by the river upon the bank thereof, on this side and on that side, shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to his months, because their waters they issue out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf thereof for medicine. Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 12. And there were some who died with fevers, which at some season of the year were very frequent in the land, but not so much so with fevers, because of the excellent qualities of many plants and roots which God had prepared to remove the cause of disease, to which men are subject by the nature of their climate. Alma chapter 46, verse 40. And whosoever among you are sick, and have not faith to be healed, but believe, shall be nourished with all tenderness with herbs and mild food, that not by the hand of an enemy. Doctrine and Covenants, section 42, verse 43. Section 42, verse 43. And again, verily I say unto you, all wholesome herbs God hath ordained for the constitution, nature, and use of man. Doctrine and Covenants, section 89, verse 10. I preached to a large congregation at the stand on the science and practice of medicine, desiring to persuade the saints to trust in God when sick, and not in the arm of flesh, and live by faith and not by medicine or poison, when they were sick and had called for the elders to pray for them, and they were not healed, to use herb and mild food. Doctrinal History of the Church, Volume 4, page 414. See also Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 190. Apostle Willard Richards prophesied that the principle of herbology would never die out or cease until it had revolutionized the earth. Pretty Meek's Journal, page 31. But today in the modern church, we are relying mostly on medicine, doctors, and drugs from Gentile or from Babylon. We are also failing to eat the fruits and vegetables as prescribed by the Lord. So like in the Doctrine and Covenants where we get in the Word of Wisdom, like it's more than just withholding yourself from drinking hot drinks and alcohol and whatnot. The Word of Wisdom is more complex. It's a dietary law, but the church for some reason goes hog wild on coffee and tea and which doesn't even say that in there. It says hot drinks. So Spencer Kimball used to love to drink scalding hot chocolate all the time, but that's not considered a hot drink, right? He also died of throat and mouth cancer, I think it was. Of course, there was a curse upon him when he gave the priesthood to those who should not have had it. And he sat up there mumbling from his throne for the next 3 years, along with his counselors. But drinking that really hot stuff, that's against the Word of Wisdom. It wasn't about coffee or tea. There's nothing wrong with coffee or tea, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. Anyway, but it's about drinking hot drinks, right? And not being drunkards and whatnot. So anyway, all right. Page 121, topic 85, 7-year famine and food storage. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one, and the 7 thin and ill-favored kine, which is talking about cattle. This is Joseph of Egypt's dream, or Joseph ben Jacob, who became Israel. Anyway, an ill-favored kine, or cattle, that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears of corn, blasted with the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 41, verse 26 and 27. Then spake Elisha unto the woman, whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go thou and thine household, and sojourn wheresoever thou canst sojourn, for Jehovah hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 1. Brethren, go and build your storehouses before your grain is harvested, and lay it up, and let us never cease until we have got 7 years' supply. You may think that we shall not see times in which we shall need it, we shall need it. Hebrews C. Kimball, Journal of Discourses, Volume 4, page 337. Let us heed the counsel given about storing up provisions, and instead of freighting our food away to feed strangers. Let us go to work and build good substantial granaries and fill them with breadstuffs every year. Man and woman has enough on hand to last for 7 years. George Albert Smith, Journal of Discourses, Volume 12, page 142. Actually, the AUB, different branches of the AUB or whatnot, I know where they do this. They have 7 years of provisions, complete with enough to defend it. Those saints, a fundamentalist polygamy down near Monticello, Utah, that lives in the sandstone houses in the cliffs. I know them personally. I know they've got enough to defend. The fundamentalists down in Colorado City did have it until it was confiscated from them by the government. But there are groups that are trying to continue on living these higher laws. Now in the church, it used to be when I was young that they would say 2 years food storage. And the government came out with a law saying that you are not supposed to have more than 3 months supply in your home, and that you were breaking federal laws if you were to do so about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. Maybe it's probably been longer than that. But that's just Babylon trying to weigh themselves down on the saints of the Most High. Where out the saints of the Most High, as it speaks of in Daniel chapter 7. A few years ago, President Young gave counsel to the people of the territory, most of whom agreed to it, to lay up 7 years' provisions, we were to have commenced 3 years ago, and there to have laid up 1 year's bread over and beyond the year's supply. The following year, we were to add another year's supply, and so have continued until we have our 7-year supply laid up. How faithful the people have been in keeping this counsel, I am not prepared to say. George Albert Smith, Journal of Discourses, Volume 12, page 141. I have to give a voice of warning to the people. If God is telling you to leave the cities and you do not leave, which He's told me to do, and several other people I know have been told to leave, the day will come when you have to choose between your safety and by leaving, or you cling to your food storage and you'll die for it. And it's not a joke, people. Like, if God is telling you to leave the cities and go into the country, you need to do it, even if you don't want to. I'm glad I did. I mean, even though there's things about Emory County I cannot stand, but there's things I love about Emory County. Like, I don't have to lock, even though I'm going to, but I know I have friends that don't take their keys out of their car. They don't lock anything up because we don't have a drug problem down here. We don't have a huge problem. We don't have a huge problem. Sorry to interrupt. Great stream so far, but can you do a tab? Whatever. Somebody, I don't check the Facebook. I mean the YouTube. But somebody asked me to dab, so I dabbed. Anyway, but today in the modern church, it was during these years, 1855 and 1856, I say, that the wise policy was inaugurated of storing up grain against each year, against a day of famine, a policy which though now sometimes since abandoned, Correlated History of the Church, Volume 4, page 112. No one is teaching the saints to prepare for the 7-year famine which is coming, or the 2-year, food storage or any of it. No, it just doesn't happen. So, all right. So page 122 of 95 Thesis, written by Ogden Kraut, which you can read for free online at ogdenkraut.com. Click on Read Ogden's Books. Once you get to the main page, scroll down to 95 Thesis. We're on page 122. Topic 86, Fear of Your Enemies. With whom the Lord had made a covenant, and charged them, saying, Ye shall not fear other gods, or give respect to other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, which means to worship them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them, but Jehovah, who brought you up out of the land of Mizraim, or Egypt, with great power and a stretched out arm. Him shall ye fear, and him shall ye worship, or bow down to. That's what it means to worship. In Hebrew, it means to prostrate yourself before somebody of great authority. That's the literal meaning of worship. So, like these guys that do praise and worship, in Hebrew, the word praise actually does mean to lift up on high. So, yeah, they're doing the praising thing, but the worship thing is reverently bowing yourself down before. And you should do that when you pray. When you go before the Lord your God in prayer, you should bow down yourself before Him. So, of course, keeping a prayer in your heart at all times is also something that we should do. And for people that have a hard time with that, I suggest listening to Christian music. Keeps your mind focused on God. Anyway, to Him shall ye do sacrifice, the statutes and the ordinances and the law, or the Torah. Oh, shalom, Ricardo. Thank you for coming on and watching. And the law and the commandment which He wrote for you, ye shall observe to do forevermore. And ye shall not fear other gods, or other Elohim. And the covenant that I have made with you, ye shall not forget. Neither shall ye fear other gods. But Jehovah your Elohim ye shall fear, or respect. And out of hand, and He shall deliver you out of the hand, hands of your enemies. 2 Kings chapter 17, verses 35 through 39. So Allie's asking me if I pray with folding my arms or what. Okay. For kids, you don't want them to hit their brothers and sisters and to be joking around, so you have the little kids fold their arms. But you can pray in the Yod level of prayer with hands uplifted. You can pray with hands held high if you want. Most of the time I pray like this. When I shower in the mornings, I will lay my towel down after I dry myself off, after I shower, before I put clothes on, and I will lay my towel down before God, and I will, on my hands and knees, with my arms uplifted and my hands uplifted in this manner. And that is some of the deepest times of prayer that I have personally. But, God doesn't judge you for doing this. He doesn't judge you for doing it how you're doing it. But this is how I pray. O God, the eternal Father, we come to thee in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Or, O God, the eternal Father, I come to thee in the name of thy Son, Yeshua, our Messiah, our Messiah. And I ask for forgiveness of my sins, that I might have thy Spirit to be with me. And then I ask for the blessings, and I thank him for all of my blessings. And so that's how I do it. In the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. It's perfectly fine to pray in the name of Jesus Christ as well. I prefer Yeshua because that was his name while he was on the earth. And so that's what I do. So anyway, my son is now home, and he is going to be very quiet and go downstairs and clean everything and do all the laundry and then come upstairs and make all the food. And he's like, anyway, but that's how I pray. So, I still have my kids fold their arms, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just that, like when we were children, we did things a certain way, and when we become adults, we do things a different way. And there's different traditions where people hold hands, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So, for Jehovah hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. Actually, the power of God is his love. And I don't expect anybody to know what that actually is until they're within that glory. But, it's more than just a feeling. Love is an action verb, but it's also a power. And, when you're within the presence of God, that overwhelming power of his love, it flows throughout you. It cleanses you of all unrighteousness, especially if you're covered in the blood of the Lamb. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be made as white as snow. The power of God's love is what cleanses all of us. So I really like that. But the power and love of God, it should be the power of God's love. Anyway. And behold, how oft you have transgressed the commandments and the laws of Jehovah, and have gone on in the persuasions of men, which the church is completely guilty of. For behold, you should not have feared man more than you feared God, although men set at naught the counsels of God. So like what I did, when God told me not to go in the house where my fiance was, and I was like, it won't be that bad. I'll just go in and drop this stuff off, and then I'll leave. I should have listened. I set at naught the counsel of God to me personally, and I paid the consequence for it, which was a very heavy price to pay. But that's what we all do. We have all done it. We're all guilty of it. So let me read it again here. And behold how oft you have transgressed the commandments and laws of God, and have gone on in the persuasions of men. And we all have a problem with this because of our false traditions in our day and age that we are brought up with. We were all raised as Gentiles, but God knows that we are His saints. We are Israelites. And that is in our blood, but like some of us, it might be through the law of adoption, but all they who become followers of Jesus Christ are adopted to Him and to the house of Israel. So we should be following His laws. We are all Israel, but we're raised as Gentiles, so we don't know what to do, right? Well, God wants to reveal those things to us. And as we progress in our lives and move towards worshiping how He asks us to worship Him, keeping His commandments and keeping His holy days, His Moedim, and doing what He's asked us to do, He's going to show us more and reveal more to us so that we can go from being Gentile saints to being Israelite saints, which we are. So it's just coming out of the spirit of Babylon. It's such a hard thing to do, especially when you were raised in it. For behold, you should not have feared man more than God. Although men set at counsel are at naught the counsels of God and despise His words, yet you should have been faithful, and He would have extended His arm and supported you against the fiery darts of the adversary, and He would have been with you in every time of trouble. Doctrine and Covenants, section 3, verses 2 through 8. So this is a perfect scripture for the church to read at this time as well. If we set at not the counsels of God, what He's asked us to do as a people, we are guilty of iniquity and apostasy. And it is what it is. Quote, I will not suffer that they shall destroy my work. Yea, I will show unto them that my wisdom is greater than the cunning of the devil. Doctrine and Covenants, section 10, verse 43. Quote, behold, I say unto you, David, that you have feared man and have not relied on me for strength as you ought. But your mind has been on the things of the earth more than the things of me, and have been persuaded by those whom I have not commanded. Doctrine and Covenants, section 30, verses 1 and 2. I've been the same way. I don't want to proselyte in this community where I live in because I am tired of being persecuted by them and having my children persecuted by them. But if God sent me here to do a work among these people, I should be out there doing a work among these people. And I kind of think that God has cursed my company so that I would do this work more because my truck keeps on breaking down, which gives me lots of time off, which is sad for my boss and his family, but it gives me time to actually make these videos and do these teachings. So, but I love driving a truck, so I don't know how I'm going to ever stop doing that. But, you know, we should fear God more than we fear man. We should have honor and respect to God more than we worry about what somebody will think of what we're doing. So anyway, behold, verily I say unto you, that the heart of my servant James Colville was right before me, for he covenanted with me that he would obey my word. And he received the word with gladness, but straightway Satan tempted him, and the fear of persecution and the cares of the world caused him to reject the word. So I'm guilty of that as well. So is my wife. And I need to repent for that. Well, we can all repent, so... Wherefore he broke my covenant, and it remaineth with me to do with him as seemeth me good. Doctrine and Covenants, section 40, verses 1 through 3. Page 123, quote, and I, the Lord, would fight their battles and their children's battles and their children's children's until they had avenged themselves of all their enemies to the third and fourth generation. Doctrine and Covenants, section 98, verse 37. Quote, for behold, I do not require at their hands to fight the battles of Zion, as I have said in former commandments, even so will I fulfill. I will fight your battles. Doctrine and Covenants, section 105, verse 14. Salvation is nothing more nor less than the triumph over all our enemies and put them under our feet. And when we have power to put all our enemies under our feet in this world and a knowledge to triumph over all evil spirits in the world to come, then we are saved. Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 297. But today in the modern church, which is the wisest course for the Latter-day Saints to pursue? To continue to attempt to practice plural marriage with the laws of the nation against it and the opposition of 60 millions of people at the cost of the confiscation and losses of all the temples and the stopping of all the ordinances therein, both for the living and the dead, and the imprisonment of the first presidency and the 12, and the heads of families in the churches, and the confiscation of personal property of the people, all of which themselves would stop the practice, or after doing and suffering what we have through our adherence to this principle, to cease the law, the practice, and the law of God, and submit to the law 60 millions of Gentiles. So basically, they gave in to the fear of the world rather than trusting in God. Wilford Woodruff in the 1880s was told specifically not to give up the law of plural celestial marriage, not to give in to the Gentiles, and he did it anyway. And it was never a revelation by God. God doesn't give manifestos. He gives thus saith the Lord revelations. If he had received a revelation according to the bylaws of the church as given to us by Jesus Christ in the Doctrine and Covenants, he should have presented the revelation for the church, the body of the membership, to inspect and to sustain if they chose to sustain it. They didn't have to. When Wilford Woodruff heard the saints lift up their hands and agree to the manifesto, he said, "We have made a pact with the devil," which Isaiah saw in Isaiah chapter 28. The drunkards of Ephraim making basically I'm not going to read it. Well, I'll read it. Just throw it out here, because I'm kind of forgetting exactly how it's worded, so I should remind myself anyway. Jeremiah. There it is. All right, so we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 28. Since I keep on quoting, I might as well just read it. Woe unto the crown of pride to the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower. It's because they're in apostasy, because they turn away from God's laws, and he doesn't give them his spirit anymore. He doesn't give them revelation anymore. So they're like a fading flower. Like God gives us as a church the living water, and if he doesn't give us revelation, we are in a drought spiritually. And so we're a fading flower, which are on the head of the fat valleys of them that are overcome with wine. Behold, the Lord hath a mighty and strong one, talking of the same mighty and strong one as in Doctrine and Covenants section 85, who Jesus says, I'll go to that real quick. So I'm going to go to section 85 of the Doctrine and Covenants. I can find it. Oh, here it is. Oh, let's see here. Okay, this is Jesus Christ. And it shall come to pass that I will send one mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power in his hand. Who is he? He's the one mighty and strong, clothed with light for a covering, whose mouth shall utter words, eternal words, while his bowels shall be a fountain of truth, to set in order the house of God, and arrange by lots the inheritances of the saints whose names are found, and the names of their fathers and of their children enrolled in the book of the law of God. Okay, so it's speaking of this one mighty and strong here in Isaiah chapter 28. Behold, I, Jehovah, hath a mighty and strong one, which is a tempest of hell and a destroying storm, as a flood of mighty waters overthrowing. So he will come like a destroying storm to break down the false traditions of the saints in the last days. And that flood of mighty waters overflowing shall cast down to the earth with the hand. This is a sign to look for when waves heave themselves beyond their bounds for the time of his coming, which happened in 2004. And the crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim, shall be trodden under feet. Well, that's not talking about the Latter-day Saints, but the very next chapter is talking about the Book of Mormon. It is talking about the Latter-day Saints. And a glorious beauty which is on the head of the fat valley shall be a fading flower, and as a hasty fruit before the summer, which when he that looketh upon it, while it is yet in his hand, he eateth it up, because it's about to spoil. In Matthew chapter 24, when it says that the eagles would be gathered to where the carcass was, God revealed to me that the eagles are the elect of God, and they are feeding on the meat of the gospel in a dead church. And that is in the last days. That's what's happening right now. The church doesn't receive revelation. They do not get visions. A lot of things have been withheld from them. And the meat is what we're talking about here. This is the meat of the gospel that the elect, the eagles, feed upon. And in that day the Lord of hosts shall be for a crown of glory and for a diadem of beauty unto the residue of the people, a residue of Ephraim. So if I have milk in my cup here and I pour all that milk out, the residue is what's left clinging to the side, so almost nothing. The residue of Ephraim is not a large body of people. God cares more about the quality of the people than he cares about the quantity. He would that all of his children were saved. He would that all of his children were prophets. But the people who will obey him are the ones who he will bless, and that is the quality of the people, not the quantity. For a spirit of judgment to him that sitteth in judgment, and for strength to them that turn to the battle gate. But they, the drunkards of Ephraim, have erred through wine, and through strong drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision and stumble in judgment. What is the wine and strong drink that they are drunk on? They are drunk on the spirit of Babylon the Great. And it causes them to err in vision and stumble in judgment because they turn away from what God has asked them to do, to conform more to the ways of Babylon the Great than they do to live God's higher laws. And remember, nobody is blessed with the higher blessings unless they live the higher laws. So when people make the excuse that we shouldn't be living these higher laws, and then they think that we're going to get blessed and be exalted, well, if you don't live the higher laws, you don't receive your exaltation. You receive damnation. But continuing on with the drunkards, the priests, and the prophets who have erred through strong drink, we see, for all tables are full of vomit and filth, so there is no place clean. This is because they reject the meat of the gospel, like plural celestial marriage, the law of adoption, the gathering to one place in the land of Zion, and all of the many other things, the united orders, the laws of consecration, all the things. They reject it, and then they look back on it as they've rejected it as filth and vomit. They've rejected it from the body of the church, and they look upon it as filth and vomit. Whom shall he teach knowledge? Speaking of the one mighty and strong mentioned in verse 2. Whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? They that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breasts. They who are weaned from the milk of the gospel and are ready to receive the meat of the gospel, which is a residue of the people who are prepared for it. For precept must be upon precept, precept on precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. So anyway, but it continues to talk about, I wanted to read this part. I'm just going to continue reading. For with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to his people, to whom he said, this is the rest wherewith ye may cause the weary to rest, and this is the refreshing, yet they would not hear. But the word of Jehovah was unto them, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little, that they might go and fall back and be broken and snared and taken. See, God is leaving you without excuse. He's revealing so many things to the people, and they just reject it because of their Babylonian Gentile ways. And they'll be judged for that. Verse 14, wherefore hear the word of the Lord, ye scornful men that rule over this people, which is at Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is a type and metaphor for where the church is headquartered at. So that would be Salt Lake City in our day and age. Because ye have made a covenant with death, and with hell are at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us, for we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have hid ourselves. So this is the part here. When Wilford Woodruff heard the saints sustain giving up plural celestial marriage, he was heard to say, we have made a covenant with death and with hell at our agreement. This is talking about the saints in the latter days. Behold, thus saith the Lord God, or Jehovah your Elohim, behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone. This is for Ephraim. Okay, this is not the stone and rock of Judah, who is Jesus Christ, his name was Yeshua, but a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste. This foundation zone is that one mighty and strong. Judgment will he lay to the line, and also righteousness to the plummet. So that's just basically, he's bringing everything back into order. And the hell shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters shall overflow the hiding place. And that's talking about, in Peter it says, and in Doctrine and Covenants section 112, it's talking about how the curses of God will come upon my people first, among they who say that they know me and do not, who blaspheme in my house. This is the overflowing scourge that will destroy the people, the wicked of the people. And this is prophesied, like I said, Peter prophesied about it, and we find it in Doctrine and Covenants, section 112. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it. For the time that it goeth forth, it shall take you. For morning by morning it shall pass over, this overflowing scourge, by day and by night, and it shall be a vexation only to hear of the report of it. So when the world sees what's happening to the cleansing of the people of God, it will vex them to their very souls to even hear the report of it, because of how bad it will be. This is why I tell you to get out of the cities, people. For the bed is shorter. Oh, hold on. My wife is calling. Okay, you're on the show.
Oh, hi. How is everybody?
Everybody's good. Although, I did tell you I was doing this, right?
I don't remember.
I sent you a text.
Oh. Okay.
Anyway, what's going on? I'm just reading the scriptures here.
Okay.
My wife. Are you going to say something?
Oh, I was just calling to let you know that I was on my way and just seeing if you needed me to pick anything up.
I'm good.
Okay.
You can mute yourself if you want to listen.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just continue reading then. Is there anything else you'd like to ask before
Nope. I'm just gonna go get fuel. And
Oh yeah, I forgot you're almost out.
yep.
Okay, well, I'll just continue reading. So we're in verse 20 of Isaiah chapter 28. So Isaiah is trying to use imagery to depict what's actually happening here among the drunkards of Ephraim. And he says he sees that there's a bed. The bed is shorter than the man can stretch himself on it, and the covering narrower than he can wrap himself in it. For the Lord shall rise up as in Mount Perazim, and he shall be wroth in the valley of Gibeon, and he may do his work, his strange work, to bring to pass his act, his strange act. Anyway, I just wanted to go over that one part. The part about the precious cornerstone of Zion, which is talking about Messiah ben Yosef, is also spoken of in Genesis chapter 49. Grab that here. And it's been a while since I've read this one too, so I'm going to read this. My garments that I'm wearing right now are so old that they are stretched out and they are falling off of my shoulders. So they keep on falling down to my elbow here, and I keep having to reach in my shirt and pull them back up. But so we're going to read Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 49, the blessing of Joseph by his father Israel. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, speaking of the water, whose branches, his posterity, runneth over a wall. The archers, his brethren, have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hand were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd and stone of Israel, even by the God of the fathers who shall help thee, and by the Almighty who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above the blessings of the deep that lieth under the blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors, his children, unto the utmost bounds of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. This is speaking of the utmost bounds of the everlasting hills. This is where the tribe of Joseph would be led off to. And it talks about from thence is the shepherd and stone of Israel. This is talking about not the stone of Judah, but the stone of Joseph, Messiah ben Yosef. That the Jews knew about two Messiahs, one king Messiah called Messiah ben David, who would be a king in the millennial reign, and we know him as Jesus Christ. He paid our sins, or the penalty for our sins, so that we can come back into the presence of the Father. But Messiah ben Yosef, who is not Jesus Christ, was of the loins and line of authority given to Joseph, not Judah, and Messiah ben Yosef comes through the family tree of Ephraim, who is Joseph's son. So, anyway, but that is the one mighty and strong, and that's who I profess to be. So, anyway, continuing on. And submit to the law. Oh, hold on, I've already read that. So, we're on page 124, topic 87, false prophets. And the word of Jehovah came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel that prophesy, and say thou unto them that prophesy out of their own hearts, Hear ye the word of Jehovah. Thus saith Jehovah your Elohim. Woe unto the foolish prophets that follow their own spirit and have seen nothing. Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 1 through 3. See also Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 1 through 5. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death because they considered him a false prophet, right? Matthew chapter 27, verse 1. O my people, they who lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. 2 Nephi chapter 13, verse 12. Let me just read that too. So the Book of Mormon wasn't written for the people of their day. It was actually this is a love letter from God. This Bible is a love letter from God. It's upside down. This is a love letter. This is also a love letter from God. But this is to a separate people, the tribe of Ephraim in the last days. This is the Book of Mormon. And it is an instruction given to us about things that we need to look out for in these last days as we seek to build up Zion and to redeem Zion, right? So this was written to us. This wasn't written to the Nephites of their day. This was compiled by the prophet, historian, Mormon, and Moroni, and given to the prophet Joseph Smith for us in our day and age. To us. So, let me see here. And woe to the wicked, for they shall perish, and the reward of their hands shall be upon them. And my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. And this is also spoken of in Isaiah. And women rule over them. O my people, they who lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the ways of thy paths. The Lord standeth up to plead and stand to judge the people. The Lord will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people and the princes thereof. For ye have eaten up the vineyard and the spoil of the poor in your houses. But this is talking to Israel, and it says, what mean ye? Ye beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor, saith the Lord God of hosts. This is talking about the church who refuse to help the poor, but they grind their faces by requiring a heavy burden of taxation, the tithing, which should not be, the people should not have to give tithing like they do it. The way it's done today is completely out of order. And the fact that President Nixon and other current leaders or just past leaders like Thomas Monson say that it's better if you only have enough money to buy your medicine or to pay tithing, pay tithing. If you only have enough money to buy food or pay tithing, pay tithing. If you only have enough money to not be homeless, pay your tithing anyway, because they want your tithing, because it's about a business for them. They want your money. But then they turn around and they won't help you, right? If you have enough to pay your medical bill or your to get your medicine. If you have enough to get your food and you don't have enough to pay tithing, then get your food. This is what he means by grinding the faces of the poor. They will take everything from you and will not bless you. They should be living the law of consecration. They should be helping out the poor. Did you know that the church only devotes 10% of the tithing to the bishop's storehouses, to the humanitarian effort of the church? And they use the rest. They use the rest to have their investments, their stocks and bonds, their investments in their prison communities. Hold on. Excuse me. Hey, lady, are you going to be screaming while I'm doing this when you know I'm up here doing this? You guys go outside and scrape the trampoline off. And then you can come back in here when you're cold and be quiet. Go ahead and do it right now. I want that trampoline scraped off. We got like 2 feet of snow on our trampoline and it's like sagging down. I've asked them to please clean it off for the last week, I guess. But anyway, my kids are all downstairs screaming and yelling and jumping and wrestling and whatnot. So, all right. Let me just continue on here. But that's what false prophets do. They ask for your money, for your time, for your devotion. They tell you to follow them and not follow God. They will not teach you to get revelation from God for yourself. They say that we stand as a link in between you and God, and you must obey us and listen to us and do as we say. A true prophet will teach the people first to keep God's covenants and commandments, his true covenants and commandments, not the traditions of men, and he will teach the people to get revelation and confirmation of the Spirit for themselves. And if a prophet is not doing it, as Isaiah said, to the law and to the testimony, if they do not according to these things, there is no truth in them. So these Gentile prophets who pretend to be prophets, seers, and revelators, like David O. McKay, for instance, who said that Jesus Christ's eyes were brown when they are blue. Joseph Smith said that they were blue. I've seen him; they're blue. Okay, and there's very specific things about his eyes that I'm not going to reveal, but overall, they're blue, and you cannot mistake it, David O. McKay. But he's a prophet, seer, and revelator, and who's going to challenge him? I don't know, Joseph Smith. I've actually found it. Kim, you want to talk about this a little bit? How we found Joseph Smith, his own words, where he said that Jesus Christ's eyes were blue on LDS.org. And then you go to David O. McKay, and he's like, they're brown. What do you want? Okay, did you go to school today? So why don't you use the shoes that you had on all day long to do what I just asked you to do? Use my boots that you like to use. They're snow boots. Anyway, go ahead, Kim.
Can you please repeat the question? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So you're asking me exactly what? Are you asking me about his eyes, or are you asking me about what it says about his eyes? I can barely hear you when you do that. So, but anyways, so let's see. Well, it is curious that the early leaders of the church, like Joseph Smith, talks about his eyes being blue, that being really bright, and like specific things that they say about his countenance. Because they don't just talk about his color of his eyes, they do talk about his countenance, like the color of his skin, and him being very bright and white. But they also talk about his eyes being blue, Joseph Smith says, specifically. And then later on, like you were saying, Bruce R. McConkie says that they're brown. And I think because
of David O. McKay that said that they were brown.
David O. McKay. I think because of David O. McKay saying that is where the current pictures and paintings of Christ come from, because in all of the paintings that are now done, all these artists are painting him with brown eyes. So, I don't know.
I'm on the radio show, Amberly.
Or in
They're
the
up
first
here.
story,
You had enough of them. Go back downstairs.
personally, the knowledge that I have of them would be, I would say the same thing, that they are blue. They are of a very bright color blue. And then there are other things like you were saying about them that was really interesting. And when we were, where was I? I think we were in a bookstore with Kevin and Beverly. And I don't even remember how it...
Hold on. I want people to hear this. I'm trying to set up your headset on Emmett's phone so that I can get the speaker close to... the guest call-in number is 917-889-8827. Okay, that's the radio show. Let's see if I can... And it's connected here. Okay. Press 1. Down the house cue. And let me see if I can pull you onto the speaker so that you can actually. Of course, now I can hear myself echo. I don't know how to do this. I'm so bad at this stuff.
When you're doing it that way, I have a hard time hearing.
Okay, I'm putting this behind the phone so that the people possibly can hear what you have to say concerning the what you and Kevin talked about when we first came to Utah in 2013.
Okay, and I only have just a minute, and then I have to go. But I just remember when we were talking, I don't remember how it was brought up, but we were discussing the same thing of why did it say, why did it say with Joseph Smith that they were completely different colors? It wasn't even questionable. It was a completely different color than what the leaders of the church say today.
Well, you're talking about how his eyes are blue, not brown, and David O. McKay said his eyes were brown, so now everybody in the church is like, his eyes are brown, but they're not really brown, and Joseph Smith saw blue-eyed Jesus, not brown-eyed Jesus, so.
Right. Well, we were talking about that, but it was more in-depth, so I don't remember how it was brought up, but Kevin had said something about it, and I said, well, and then I gave this, okay, so I'm an artist, so when I see things, I look at detail. I'm very good with spatial relationships. I'm excellent when it comes to color coordination, when it comes to matching a color specifically. I'm very good at that. I always have been. So when I was talking with him about it, I was very descriptive and to the perfect description of what I had seen myself.
But don't give that away. I don't want people to know what his eyes actually look like completely, but I want people to hear it. Yeah, okay.
But there's a way that I was explaining it to him that made him get excited, because if you actually have seen his eyes, then you just know there is a difference. And when somebody describes it to you in detail, like what I was doing,
and Kevin has seen Jesus as well, so he knew.
Yeah, he knew. And he got excited about it, and he was like, exactly. So it made his eyes so.
I remember that.
Yeah.
He was standing on the other side of the counter in his bookstore in Santa Quinn, and you were standing there, and I was kind of like letting you talk because you were basically going to town talking to him, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise. But I remember seeing his face when you started talking about that.
And then he knew. It was like...
Yeah, he was like surprised.
Yeah, he was like, oh my gosh, yes. And I was like, yeah.
Because then he knew that you really have seen him face to face. Like,
right.
You've seen him as I have seen him. And Kevin has seen him. And it was a surprise to him because I don't think he expected it. So, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think it took him by surprise because he was like, wow, yeah, exactly. So, I don't remember exact words, but yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put you on mute. I can still hear you talking, but if you have anything to say that the radio audience would like to listen to, I'll bring you off of mute. But for right now, I'll just put you back in mute. So until I figure out how to do this radio thing with the videos and stuff, I'm so bad at this, people. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why God asked me to do any of this stuff. Anyways.
I have to get out of the car for a minute anyway, so I'm going to get fuel and stuff. So I will be gone for a minute, okay?
Okay. I'll just mute you. If I can. The studio's not cooperating with me today. Nope, it's not going to let me. Whatever. I had to let my wife go because I can't hear. Anyway, I wanted people to hear that, though, about David O. McKay's brown-eyed Jesus compared to Joseph Smith's blue-eyed Jesus, and with my own experience with the Father and the Son, and seeing them face to face, and my wife's experience as well as Kevin's experience. So, anyway, she'll probably call back in a minute, but we're just going to continue reading. I know, big long tangent. And many false prophets shall arise and deceive many in the last days. Matthew chapter 24, verse 11. Now, people throw this out against me as being a prophet. Okay, there's three different kinds of prophets, people. There's false prophets, there are true prophets, and there are fallen prophets. The false prophets do receive revelation. They are prophets of the devil. In Timothy, one of the letters of Timothy, it says that we need to try the spirits. These are they who do not try the spirits. They get revelation from false sources. They teach false doctrines. They teach a false Jesus, and the whole world is full of them in every town, in every city, across the whole world. There are false prophets, and people listen to them. The way is wide, or the way is narrow, and the gate is straight, and the way is wide that leads to destruction or damnation. So, now, in Romans chapter 16, it says that the deliverer will come out of Zion, speaking of a future day. That's a prophet that is prophesied to come in the future. Ephesians chapter 4 says that there should be prophets and apostles till all come in the unity of the faith, and that has not happened yet. We are not in the unity of the faith. God does continue to send his prophets and his apostles. And the two witnesses are prophets. And if you think that every prophet that comes along is a false prophet, you are going to reject the two witnesses. And the reason why it says in Revelation chapter 11 that great fear comes upon them, because when those people see these two prophets raised in the resurrection, they will have known that they were exactly who they said that they were. And God has told me, if they do not accept my second witness, my first witness will not accept them, and I will not accept them. You have to accept the prophets God sends to you, or you receive the punishment for not receiving them. So anyway, woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. Luke chapter 6, verse 26. But there were also false prophets who among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. These false prophets teach things like Jesus is the Father, and the Father is Jesus, and the Father is the Holy Ghost, and the Son is the Holy Ghost, and the Trinity is one, and not one in purpose or unity. Jesus Christ is subject to the will of the Father. Jesus said, I am why callest thou me good? There is none good, but that is one God. He pointed people to the Father all the time. Jesus said after his crucifixion and resurrection to his wife Mary, touch me not, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go unto my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father, and to your Father, to my God, and to your God. Jesus Christ and the Father are separate individuals. If it were not so, if Jesus was the Father and the Son, he's the Father through the law of adoption, but he has a Father. If he were both, how could he be separate from where he's at? And don't give me that whole bunch of crap where they say, well, we don't understand the mysteries of God. God wants you to understand his mysteries. When people say that God is a spirit, when Jesus Christ says, a spirit hath not flesh and bones as you see me have, they want to take God's body away from him. That is one of the heresies of false prophets And they don't call themselves prophets. They call themselves pastors and evangelists and these type of things. So just beware of it. If you get confirmation of the Holy Ghost for everything that you believe and you do not trust in the arm of flesh, you're not going to be deceived by false prophets. Because somebody who has that connection with God to get their own revelation and get confirmation of the Holy Spirit can't be deceived by false prophets, because God is the one that is teaching them. Now, if the people are too hard in their heart to receive a prophet, they will be deceived because they reject the prophets that are sent to them. Anyway, continuing. Beloved, believe not every spirit. Oh, this is the one. Believe not every spirit, because the spirits want to give you revelation. Doesn't come from God. Sometimes it does, but try the spirits whether they are of God. Many false prophets are gone out into the world. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. And they don't call themselves false prophets today. They call themselves evangelists and pastors and teachers and bishops, and some of them do call themselves prophets, seers, and revelators. And they are all over the world, and the whole world is deceived by them. But if you get revelation for yourself, you're not going to be deceived by them. This morning I read German and visited with a brother and sister from Michigan who thought that a prophet is always a prophet. I told them that a prophet was only a prophet when he was acting as such. Joseph Smith, Doctrinal History of the Church, Volume 5, page 265. Okay. When a prophet receives a revelation from Jehovah to give to his people, or from Jesus Christ to give to his church, the prophet is acting as a delivering spokesman for the oracle, or the word of God is delivered to the people. Now, when a prophet is tending his store and he gives you speculation on things, you should listen to him, but he's not acting in the role of a prophet at that time. And he could be giving you speculation and opinion. You should always get revelation for yourself to find out if it's true. And my ex-wife was President Hinckley's niece, great niece, and I used to say something that really used to anger her sometimes, because she would be like, President Hinckley, my uncle, said that you're not supposed to have hair that touches your collar. You can see my hair if you're watching the video. It touches my collar, right? And that was a horrible thing, and she'd like throw these things up at me all the time. And I would retort with, God doesn't stick his hand up the prophet's butt and turn him into a prophet. Not everything that the prophet says is from God. He speaks opinions as well. Anyway, 90 seconds for the live streaming portion of the radio program. The guest call-in number, like I said before, is 917-889-8827. That's 917-889-8827. When a man goes about prophesying and commands men to obey his teachings, he must either be a true prophet or a false prophet. False prophets always arise to oppose the true prophets, and they will prophesy so very near to the truth that they will deceive almost the very chosen ones. Teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith, page 365. But if you have the Spirit and you get confirmation of the Spirit, these false prophets who sound and act just like a true prophet, that you're going to find that the Spirit does not confirm their witness. And you don't have to worry about being deceived by the false prophets. Page 125. My back is killing me sitting in this chair for so long, but for although a man may have many revelations and have power to do many mighty works, yet if he boasts in his own strength and sets at naught the counsels of God, so he doesn't actually live God's commandments and follows after the dictates of his own will and carnal desires, such as people who are prophets that like to sleep around and marry young girls, he must fall and incur the vengeance of God upon him. Doctrine and Covenants, section 3, verse 4. And liars and hypocrites shall be proved by them, speaking of these mighty and strong ones that come forth to tear down the what do they call them? The Gentile Babylonian hijackers, businessmen who have hijacked the church. So, and they who are not apostles and prophets shall be known, because these guys pretend to be prophets and apostles, and they're not. But these ones who are mighty and strong, these little mighty and strong ones, they come down and they tear them down. And liars and hypocrites shall be proved by them, and they who are not apostles and prophets shall be known. Doctrine and Covenants, section 64, verse 39. But today in the church, we don't hear about these things. We are told, quote, saints safe in following the church authorities. No man ever went astray by following the counsel of the authorities of the church. Doctrines of Salvation, page 243. Now, let me just say something here. I'm going to read this too. You do not need to worry. The Lord will never let his mouthpiece lead this people astray. Ensign, October 1972. Brigham Young took lead of the church in 1844, I think it was. Right after Joseph Smith, right? He lived until 1877. He was a leader, the president of the church, for longer than anybody else. He taught the Adam God doctrine. He taught the gathering of Israel. They performed plural celestial marriage, the law of adoption, consecration, united orders, all of these things. The modern leaders of the church want to say that Brigham Young led the church astray in false doctrine with his 7 deadly heresies. One of them being the Adam God doctrine, which is still taught in the endowment to this day, might I add. But they don't want the people to understand it, and they want to say that Brigham Young led the church astray. But then they also want to say out of the other side of their mouth that the saints are safe in following church authorities, even though the scripture says not to trust in the arm of flesh. No man ever went astray by following the counsels of the authorities of the church. Doctrines of Salvation, which was written by Joseph F. Smith, I think. Also, you do not need to worry. The Lord will never let his mouthpiece lead this people astray. And this is something that is still taught in the church to this day. But you can find it in writing in many places, but in Ensign, October 1972. But then they say that Brigham Young led the people astray in false doctrine. So which is it? And that goes with the Canaanite priesthood and all of it. Was he an apostate? Did he lead the church astray? And if he did, as you say he did, modern leaders of the church, if he led the people astray, how dare you say that you cannot lead the people astray? Or if he didn't lead the people astray, then who are you to say that he did? And are you, by your very actions, leading the church astray by apostatizing from the revealed truth given to us by Brigham Young and Joseph Smith and others? Changing the ordinances, changing the endowments, changing the gospel, here a little and there a little, as Isaiah saw in Isaiah chapter 28? Are you leading the church astray? Yes, you are. You need to repent. In Revelations chapter 1, it says that we need to return to the first works, lest the candlestick be taken from among you. Joseph Smith was the candlestick for his day and age. He was the one that God sent, the anointed of God, sent to restore the house of Israel. And they would not listen to him, and they would not restore and return to the first works, which part of that's the Moedim, the fullness of the priesthood, all these things. And he was taken from among them. I am a candlestick as well. And I am sorry, but If people won't listen to me, I wonder, am I going to be taken away from the people as well? It's something that causes me to, because Joseph Smith didn't want to leave. Anyway, we have 2 more topics to get through before my back completely gives out. And then we'll be back on tomorrow, maybe. All right, page 126. And I don't know why my truck's not fixed yet. It's been a while, and it's still not fixed. And I still have no work, so I'm on unemployment. So, page 126, topic 88, persecutors. And the Lord thy God, Jehovah thine Elohim, will put all these curses upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecute thee. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 7. There is one like Christ. He cannot be found on the earth. Then why should his followers complain? If from those whom they once called brethren and consider as standing in the nearest relation in the everlasting covenant, they should receive persecution. I have no idea what he's trying to say, but that's Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, page 68. I'm not going to go into it. So we've got 2 topics left, and I've been on the show for 2 hours and 6 minutes. So it would be impossible for tyranny to flourish for any length of time in our midst. Oppression of every form would sooner or later have to disappear, or else there would have to be an apostasy from the true principles of the gospel on the part of the people. Oppression, tyranny, misrule cannot coexist with the principles of the gospel as they are taught in our midst. That is the greatest possible consistent with good order and preservation of the rights of others. I'm not understanding these quotes. Liberty cannot be permitted to denigrate into license, but the utmost liberty can be enjoyed as long as it does not overstep that boundary. You will find that the opponents of truth, or to speak more plainly according to our phraseology and our methods of expressing ideas, the followers of Satan, you'll find that wherever there was a persecution upon the earth, they were its authors. Whenever men were trampled upon and their rights were denied them, when men fell victim to violence and the maladministration of the laws, it was those who were led by Satan's influence and yielded to his power who were the instruments in committing those evils. Hence you will find that good men never persecuted bad men, never destroyed wicked men when they had power. They were not oppressors, they were not tyrants, they were not persecutors, they did not infringe upon the rights of their fellow men like the church has done to people in Short Creek. I want to study that, and it makes me sick to even think about it. Upon the liberties are conscious, nor upon its proper exercise, nor upon the exercise of man's agency. They never sought to restrain it. God does not do it. Jesus did not do it. And no servant of God did it that had a true concept of his calling. George Q. Cannon, Journal of Discourses, Volume 24, page 58 through 59. You will never find a people of God who have the truth persecuting another people. You will never have a people of God who have the truth persecuting another people. If they were to do so, they would cease to be the people of God. It is the characteristic of the Church of God always that it never condescends to persecution. It does not fear the announcement of any doctrine or any principle or any form of belief or any so-called revelation. Okay, the church should not fear these things, right? But they excommunicate people who do receive these things or believe in certain doctrines that were taught by Brigham Young, etc. Strong in the knowledge they have the truth that God is with them, such a people can afford to let false doctrines, when it manifests itself, have the freedom of action the right of agency which God has given unto every human being, and every human being has the right to exercise undisturbed by his fellow man, so long as he does not interfere with the happiness and the lives and the liberties of the fellow man. George Q. Cannon, Deseret News, January 27, 1884. And he was actually quoting Joseph Smith when he said that, because Joseph Smith had some very similar statements. Continuing on, the religion that obtains an exalted popularity amongst men, receive their approbation and support, cannot be of God, but on the contrary, exactly in proportion as the church is of God or has received of his Spirit. Even in that degree will be the hostility of the world. Editorial, Millennial Star, Volume 5, page 39. But today, in the modern church, we have been, however, and we are entirely willing and anxious to, that such offenders against the law of the state should be dealt with and punished as the law provides. So the church actually goes against fundamentalist believers, people who believe in keeping the laws that God has asked us to live. The church will persecute them and go up against them and fight them and throw them into prison, which they shouldn't do. We have been and will be willing to give such legal assistance as we legitimately can in the legal prosecution of such cases. We are willing to go to such limits not only because we regard it as our duty as citizens of the country to assist in the enforcement of the law and the suppression of the pretended plural marriages. See, and these guys that leave the church, they left the church. They are no longer part of your church. You have no jurisdiction over them. If they want to live plural celestial marriage and they are consenting adults, what the hell do you as a people have anything to do with it? But the blood of fundamentalists is upon the LDS Church, very literally upon the LDS Church. Tearing apart families, very literally upon the LDS Church. Even though in the Pearl of Great Price and the Articles of Faith, we let everyone live their religion as they, I'm paraphrasing it, but that's not true. They don't. People who are not even part of your religion, who are fundamentalists, who are believers in Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and the laws God has given to us through the Doctrine and Covenants, who do not subject themselves to your church authority, you persecute. People have died because of your persecution. Families have been torn apart because of your persecution. When it is said in your scripture that you ought not to do these things, it's because you've become the church of Babylon, hijacked by Babylonian businessmen. But also because we wish to do everything humanly possible to make our attitude towards this matter so clear, definite, and unequivocal as to leave no possible doubt of it in the mind of any person, because they want to be Babylonian Christians. Good. Go to hell, because that's where you belong. Heber J. Grant, Conference Report, April 4th through the 6th, 1931. The Church has actively assisted federal and state authorities in obtaining evidence against the cultists, that's what they call the polygamists, the fundamentalists, and helping to prosecute them under the law. So they don't follow God's laws themselves, and people who choose to follow God's laws, they persecute. God, it makes me so angry. And it makes me angry because I know the history of it. So if you're not angry because of it, it's probably because you don't know the history of it. And if you learn the history of it, among witnesses for the prosecution, are men who have been appointed by the church to search out the cultists, the fundamentalists, turning over such information as they gather to the prosecution for their use. These men have also been appointed by the church to do all they can to fight the spread of polygamy. Mark E. Peterson, Ogden Standard Examiner, October 7th, 1944. Okay, this is the last one that we're going to be doing today. On page 128 of 95 Thesis by Ogden Kraut, we are on topic 89, excommunication. Nevertheless, among the chief rulers, also many believe on him, but because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they be put out of the synagogue. So, the believers in Jesus Christ were excommunicated from the synagogue for confessing Jesus Christ. For they loved the praise of men more than they did the praise of God. John chapter 12, verses 42 through 43. These things have I spoken unto you, that ye should not be offended. They shall put you out of the synagogues. John chapter 16, verse 2. See, the leadership of the church today is much like the leadership of the church in Jesus Christ's day. Why do I say that? Because even though they would say, oh, we hate the Roman authority oppressing us, the leadership of the church received their authority from the Romans, not from God. They didn't want to disturb that because the Roman legions were there to make sure that there would be no uprisings among the people. They couldn't uprise against the church or the synagogues, the high priests and the Pharisees and these guys. They couldn't go against the state either. In our day, we can't go against the state, of course, but the leadership of the church gets their marching orders from Babylon the Great, or from the country. The country tells them that they have to ordain blacks and put them in the church, in the temples, even though in Zechariah chapter 14, Zechariah sees a day when there will be no more Canaanite in the house of the Lord. That's the last verse in Zechariah chapter 14, speaking of the millennial day, that there will be no more Canaanite in the house of the Lord. And why would Zechariah say this? Because first of all, they got in, and second of all, they never should have been in there. But Spencer W. Kimball gets word from Jimmy Carter that they're going to have their 501c3 status taken away from them if they don't allow blacks, Canaanites, into the temples. And so instead of listening to what God's commandments are, they do what the state says. It's the same thing with plural celestial marriage. It's the same thing with the gathering of Israel. During the Reed Smoot hearings, Reed Smoot wanted to be a senator. They had some hearings because he was a polygamist. They didn't want him to be a senator. Joseph F. Smith goes out there with them. The Babylon, whatever, they tell him not to, to gather any more people to the Rocky Mountain states. And then Joseph F. Smith goes and contradicts former revelation, which tells the people to gather to North America. And they come up with a false revelation because they received it from their Babylonian masters, who they get authority from, because they don't get it from God anymore. When they go against God's commandments, God takes their authority away from them. And he gives a false revelation that says, do not gather to the, Zionists, wherever you're at, which completely contradicts the gathering of Israel spoken to us by the Scriptures, by Jesus Christ himself. Anyway, continuing on, and anybody who is like me, a fundamentalist or believer in the prophecies and the revelations of Jesus Christ to Joseph Smith, who points out these things, in order to shut me up, they throw me out. Continuing, you cannot take any man's priesthood away without transgression. John Taylor, Times and Seasons, Volume 6, page 922. Let me tell you something. Okay, so I believe in the Adam God doctrine, which is still taught in your temples. In the endowment, we see that the Elohim, which is the mighty ones under God the Eternal Father, sent Jehovah our Elohim, our mighty one, with Michael to create an earth for us to dwell. Joseph Smith taught quite correctly that another name for God, our Father, is God the Creator. Jehovah had Michael go and create the earth. And in the endowment, everybody say it with me if you've been endowed, and Michael said, it will be done. And he did it. Michael created this earth. God our Father. Under the direction of Jehovah our Elohim, our mighty one. There is a first presidency for every earth, and our first presidency consists of Michael the Archangel, Jesus Christ the Redeemer, and God the Witness. Under the direction of Jehovah our Elohim, under the direction of the council of Jehovah, or of the Elohim, under the direction of God the Eternal Father. Yeah, I'm a pluralist. Polytheist. The Bible's polytheistic. The Adam God doctrine was taught in the endowment, and it was taught by Joseph Smith. And because I believe in it, I was excommunicated from the church. They think that they took my authority away from me, which authority I received by the Father under his own hand. Even in my patriarchal blessing, it says I've had my calling and election made sure. They can't take that away by excommunicating me. I have not committed transgression. I have not denied the Holy Ghost. I have not committed murder against innocent blood. And yet they think with the swipe of a pen that they can just cut me off. They cut Jesus Christ off. The church of his day, they cut him off too. And what was the penalty for excommunication in his day? It was stoning, which they attempted to do. They couldn't do it legally as the church, so they did what they put it in the hands of the Roman, and they killed him by putting him on a cross. That was the penalty for his excommunication. A year after I had been excommunicated, after my first daughter was born. So my first daughter was born in May of 2013. In August of 2014, I was coming down from Montana with 2 empty trailers from Bozeman, Montana, down I-15. And once I got close to Tremont, you come out of the mountains and you come into the valley, and all of a sudden, here I am, driving a FedEx truck, pulling 2 empty trailers, and I'm in a windstorm. I call up the dispatcher. He says that there are 70-mile-hour wind gusts for the next 4 hours, and try to find a place to pull under so my trailers don't tip over. Oh, and by the way, if the trailers tip over, you're fired. I couldn't afford to lose my job. Prayed very earnestly and asked God to please make the wind stop. And you know what he said to me? He said, command the wind to stop using the authority I gave you. So when he gave me the fullness of the priesthood in 2003, I had never used it before. This was after my excommunication. So I stopped on the shoulder of the road during this massive windstorm. And there was dust in the air. It was during the daytime, and you couldn't hardly see because of all the dust storm, right? 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts. My truck is rocking back and forth. My trailers, I'm thinking, it's great. This is, I'm going to lose my job. These trailers are going to tip over. I pulled my truck over on the shoulder, and I raised both arms to the square, and I commanded the wind to be still by the authority given to me of the Father, using the fullness of the priesthood. And I'm telling you, within minutes, the wind stopped. It immediately started slowing down. Within 5 minutes, it was a light breeze. Within 10 minutes, all that dust that was in the air came out of the sky, and I could actually see. The weather service said that wind gusts were scheduled for the next 4 hours. It stopped. My wife, I was in Tremont. I was very excited about this, by the way, because I had never used the priesthood to do this before. I had healed people. I brought one woman back from the brink of death. She should have been dead. I brought her back by the authority of the priesthood that God has given me. Actually, I'd say it was by the command of the angels. But anyway, so I call my wife, seriously, who is in Spanish Fork. And now, we only had one vehicle at the time. We lived in townhouses in Spanish Fork. And there's an overpass that you can go under, Highway 6, and then you can walk down this trail to Smith's or Fresh Market or whatever that was. It's still there. She's walking back, and she had a stroller with the baby and the two kids. Emma is like 7 at the time, and I think Lydia was 4, if I remember right. Yeah. I was so excited to tell my wife about this, and she was mad at me because when she came out of the store, like, it was all like blowing like really hard, and it wasn't that bad, but it was like nice, the windy breeze. She came out of the store, it's dead calm, and it's like 100 degrees outside in August, and she's yelling at me about how come I didn't wait, until she got home. She's joking around with me. But I still have the authority given to me by the Father, whether the church excommunicated me or not. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people, even in the church, don't even have priesthood because their lines of authority got screwed up by Heber J. Grant. From 1921 to 1957, they did not confer priesthood. They only ordained to offices. Anyway, continuing on. The next day, the prophet came to our home and stopped in our carpenter shop and stood by the turning lathe. I went and got my map for him. Now he said, I shall show you the travels of this people. He then showed our travels through Iowa and said, here I will make a place for the winter, and here you will travel west until you come to the valley of the Great Salt Lake. You will build cities to the north and to the south. This is Joseph Smith speaking. And to the east and to the west. You will become a great people, a great and wealthy people in that land. You will live to see men arise in power in the church who seek to put down your friends. Who are their friends? The people who live God's commandments. Joseph Smith prophesied that this would happen. And the friends of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Many will be hoisted because of their money and their worldly learning, Babylonian businessmen which have hijacked the church, which seem to be in possession of, and which is wealth. So many will be hoisted because of their money and their worldly learning, which they seem to be in possession of, and many who are true followers of our Lord and Savior will be cast down because of their poverty. Mosiah Hancock Journal, page 19. And I think Mosiah was the son of Levi Hancock, who was a 70 in the church back then. Anyway, continuing on. No endowments or the blessings in the house of the Lord, no patriarchal blessings, no ordination to the priesthood can be taken away once given. To prevent a person for just cause from exercising the rights and privileges of acting in the offices of the priesthood within the church may be and has been done, and the person so silenced still remains a member of the church. So that means God doesn't see the excommunication of somebody unjustly excommunicated in the church. And he does not take away priesthood, ordinances, patriarchal blessings, or any of the blessings because of the wicked who seek to throw out people who bring these things up. They don't want these things known in the church. They want to throw it all down the memory hole. But this does not take away from him any priesthood that he held. Joseph F. Smith, 6th President of the Church, Improvement Era, Volume 11, page 466. Persons sometimes say that they have enjoyed the spirit of the work as much since they were cut off as while they were in the church. These people are talking about are the fundamentalists who left the church because the church excommunicated them for practicing polygamy and united orders after the church cut them off in the 1890s. Have they enjoyed the Spirit? Yes. Why? Simply because they were wrongfully cut off. They were cut off in such a way that it did not take the Spirit of God from them. And the reason why they were cut was because they did not come up to the particular standards of perfection of those who dwelt with them, and they did not come up to their feelings. I have heard a man who was cut off because he would not believe that Adam was our father in God. Well, but what... So I was cut off for that. Well, but what was it not? But was it not so? Its being so does not change the fact that we are sinners and need salvation, and such preaching does not help men or women to repent of their sins. So it doesn't matter one way or the other. You shouldn't be cutting people off for non-sin, but they do it anyway for beliefs. Joseph Smith said that that they should believe, he should be free to believe, right? He said that he never heard of a man being punished for believing too much. But that's not the way it is in the church today. If you believe too much, or if you believe the wrong thing, even though you believe Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, even though you know that Joseph Smith was a true prophet, you're still cut off. Because you're an apostate and you're a heretic. Anyway, after that, John Taylor talked for about an hour and sat down and wrote a revelation which was given him by the Lord upon the question of plural marriage. The church doesn't want anybody to know about this either. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow, I think. Then he talked to some of us for some time and said, some of you will be handled and ostracized and cast out from the church by your brethren because of your faithfulness and integrity upon this principle. Plural celestial marriage. And some of you may have to surrender your lives because of the same, because the church has persecuted to death polygamists in the past. But woe, woe unto those who shall bring these troubles upon you. Statement by Lauren C. Woolley, Questions on Plural Marriage, Dennis R. Short, page 67. But today in the modern church, similarly, excommunication from the church removes a man from every vestige of power, priesthood power, even though that contradicts what we just read, that he may have possessed. The church and the priesthood are interwoven, and when the church is upon the earth, neither can exist independently. John A. Widtsoe, Improvement Era, September 1936. But Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery had the priesthood before the church was organized in 1830. So they were on the earth before the priesthood, or the priesthood was on the earth before the church was on the earth. So they can exist independently. And what we just read completely contradicts statement by this Widtsoe guy. God doesn't take away priesthood, especially for people who have been excommunicated wrongfully. All right, so when we come back on, we're going to get into some of my favorite topics. The freedom of thought, that'll be topic 90 on page 130, and we'll be back on tomorrow. I don't know what time I'm going to do this show, but we'll do it sometime tomorrow. So I'll probably see if there's any other good topics to read by Rob Kay at the Mormon Yeshiva, which I really enjoy. So the Mormon Chronicles actually has some really good articles as well, and so does Alan Rock Waterman for his blog, Pure Mormonism. So anyway, but we're going to leave it at that. It's been 2 hours and 34 minutes since we started, and my back is killing me. I'm going to go lay down. So thank you for watching, everyone. You can find this with the text to everything that I read today at Zion's Redemption Bookstore in probably about an hour. I'm going to post it. So, along with the videos and the radio shows. So thank you for everyone for watching. Take care. God bless and goodbye.